I think people are so fed up, and like every cycle we speak, like, oh, this is like the battle for the soul of our nation, and like this is historic. This is it. Like, if people are this fed up with this crap, and that guy still wins, if Biden still wins and is in office, then we are fucking hopeless.
Welcome back to the Stick Talk podcast. We are here in Boca Raton with our man Kaelan Dorr. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. We've been kicking it for quite a bit now. We're about an hour late on starting. It's all because you spent the whole time talking about how much you hate Donald Trump and you want to put him in jail. Walk me through that. Why do you feel that way?
I had mixed feelings. So I saw your shirt. I figured I needed a safe space. I crawled into the corner of the house that we're in right now, cried for 20 minutes, and figured, all right, I'll have a conversation with the guy.
Threw him some coloring.
But no. So we're all conservatives here. These guys, I would say, I don't know about you yet. The shirt does kind of give it away, but diehard Trump fans. I'm a little bit mixed. I would like to see somebody else, some young blood in there. Just trying to get like the old people out of office. I think it's embarrassing with everything going on with Biden and McConnell. So that's my stance on it. I know he's going to win the primary, but I think it'd be cooler to see like somebody like Vivek.
So you like Vivek? You like when he does like the cute, like the TikTok dances?
The pharma, the pharma industry plant. Didn't he work at a pharma company? Didn't he come from pharma?
I mean, yeah, he has a multi-billion-dollar biotech company that he helped start.
No,
I wouldn't say that's like just
company
pharma.
Too. Trump's been successful in business.
Okay, yeah. I feel like he's doing
successful.
well. It really does appall me, though, that they appraise Mar-a-Lago at like $18 million.
That was ridiculous.
Dude, I'd put in an offer if I had that money.
Well, like if you're him and you proactively claim that your property is worth $18 million on your taxes, the IRS are gonna be at your door within minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Like that just makes no sense. If the roles were reversed, he'd be in such deep trouble. It's crazy. Okay, so you like Vivek?
Yes.
Right. All right. Sell me on him.
I think number one, he has a lot of the same favorable characteristics of Trump. It's like he's a businessman, he's an outsider, he speaks very well, he seems to rally people behind him quite quickly. He's good at social media, he's a very good speaker,
Sounds
he's
like Obama.
entertaining on stage, but he doesn't have a lot of the bad features of Trump, where he's not like quite as brash, and for whatever reason, he won't have 50, 100 million people who will just say like, I don't give a fuck, I'll vote for anybody. I'll vote for O.J. Simpson over blank, right? Where like you have so many people who are rallied against just like, hey, I'm staunchly against Trump. I don't care who the other person is. So I'm not like staunchly Trump. I'm more so like, I definitely want a Republican in there. So I think Trump wins the primary, loses the general. I think if somehow Vivek were able to win that ticket, he would win the general. So that's more so my thought process.
Well, where are you guys on? You're Tampa folks, right? That's where you guys are at.
Yeah.
Where are you guys at with Governor Ron DeSantis or whatever his name is?
love him as a governor. I mean, we moved down here.
Yeah, I love
him to
all-
stay as our governor.
We're all living in Florida. I think during COVID, he was the man. I think he handled it better than anybody, including Trump, who gave a medal to Fauci, Operation Warp Speed. I don't think Trump handled that quite well. But so I love DeSantis as a governor. I don't think like I was a big DeSantis guy, but after just seeing him on stage, I just don't think he has like that it factor to win.
Yeah. So all right, let me post something for you then.
Okay.
What do you think about the notion that Vivek is what he is today because the wrong guys basically handed him a playbook, and that he sat there and gestated, and they did this long pregame period where like, oh, is he going to run? You know, oh, he's definitely running, but no, he's not because he's got to ride. They had to pass the repeal of the resign to run law, right?
Yep.
in Florida.
Right. There was the big, gestation period. He basically gave Vivek a playbook, right?
Yeah.
I would say Vivek is only successful because he's everything the wrong guys said Ron would be, and instead Ron has kind of been kind of a pansy the entire time.
Wait, why don't you like Ron?
Okay, look, one, he clearly, I've heard a lot. I've worked with him before, actually. He's a nice enough guy. I think he's been totally and completely brainwashed by, his consultants. I think he is running a campaign in like early 2000s. Like he's running as if John McCain is the guy who had the nomination last cycle. Like he's only as brash or as extreme or as committed to, uprooting the deep state, so on and so forth, as someone coming after John McCain would be. You can't be Trump without the baggage and then attempt to take credit for all like the Trump-esque policy stuff and be just kind of like lame like he is. Like, what did you think? So you guys are obviously, you're big social media guys, right?
Yeah.
What did you, and I like how I'm doing the interview. What did
love
you
it.
guys think of him? Like honestly, like announcing
announced?
his run on Twitter using Spaces. Like, how did you guys feel about that?
From like a tactical standpoint, it was poorly run. Like we got our guy Scott, who's a producer here. He could have done a better job than Elon, David Sachs.
Is Scott good?
He's good. He's
Okay,
good.
all right, so that's
He's
a good-
we've
okay, I
only had like
understood.
3
Trying to
podcasts
understand.
where we completely had to restart over, like an hour and a half in because the audio was corrupted. It was fun. I'm just busting balls over here. But no, I don't think Ron did a good job. I think he peaked very early and then announced like 3 months after that because of that,
Yeah.
that law that they had to overturn. I'm still talking to Vivek versus Trump, though. I mean, I think
Okay, I want to come back to this though because right now the audience is like, "What the hell did I just walk into?" There's just this debate.
Good.
Guy wearing a Trump shirt, 3
gotta-
guys that we've been watching talking about business this whole time, and now there's a Trump debate, right? So let's give the audience some context as to who you are because you're
Yeah.
very qualified to be sitting here talking about politics, given the fact that you're the CMO of the Trump campaign, you're involved in previous campaigns, the White House, all that stuff. So if you could just give the audience a quick overview of who you are and the work you've done.
No, 100%. So, my name's Kaelan Dorr. As you mentioned, I was a CMO for Trump's re-election effort in 2020. I worked both in the White House and the Treasury Departments, both doing COVID response and then congressional communications in the White House. Before that, I was on the 2015-16 campaign for Trump. And then before that, was a communications and advertising kind of specialist for candidates across the country. So you can thank us for winning like the Kentucky governor's race, and I think 2015. That was something we did. We were heavily involved in. So kind of an ad maker by trade, but been around the block doing marketing and comms for quite a bit. Seen a lot of things in DC. I actually just recently moved down here to Florida, and I'm loving the weather.
Yeah. So talk about going from Kentucky governor races to the Trump campaign. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so I got my start doing what they call like field work, right? Those are the guys that gin up phone calls and door knocks and stuff like that. And I think we made more phone calls, like voter contacts, for this guy. We ran him in a primary in Georgia. His name was Dr. Bob Johnson. Now, you think the branding is just challenges alone with a guy named Bob Johnson is like insane. You're not going to vote for that guy. He doesn't have a sexy enough name.
what was his name?
Bob,
No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I was
It's,
gonna
it's
say,
the
well-
most forgettable name in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And we went up against this guy who is on Savannah, is Georgia 1, so it's the entire coast of Georgia. This legacy money dude. We took him to a runoff, and then from there I went and I did races in Iowa, Louisiana, and then I went and worked at this ad firm where one of our clients was Ted Cruz. And at the time, Ted Cruz was running for president. We kind of did all this stuff around his announcement. And we got involved with the Trump guys. We wrote this really pretty vicious TV ad that aired kind of across the country, perhaps taking some things that 45 said out of context, and we really give them some heartburn in the home stretch. So when Ted drops out, our office gets a phone call, and it's basically it's Trump, it's them, and they're like, "Who wrote that?" Kind of looking around the room, like, "Oh, like what do we do here?" We said, "Well, we did, sir." And he says, "Good, like you work for us. Like report to Trump Tower next week." And so like we
Trump
went up.
Tower. Report to Trump Tower.
Yeah, we went up there and I did the whole thing up in New York.
So you got in right when the general was happening. So like Trump won the primary.
Yeah, right
takes
around.
you guys.
It was right before the RNC. I guess it would have been in 2015.
Okay.
So we went up to Cleveland for that, and that was a whole mess. But it was a hell of a ride, and you learn more working for him than you probably would working for any other political candidate in history. And we had a small. I was telling you guys before, we had a small team. Like,
Yeah, this
it
is
was
unbelievable.
tight.
Tell them how many people were on the whole entire 2016 team.
Well, I think like up in our in our shop in the tower, there were maybe only 15, 20 people tops.
Wow.
Wow.
And that, obviously doesn't take into account anyone like in the States, but the guys like in HQ, there were only about 20 folks. And then you compare that to 2020, I don't have enough hands to count how many people they'd hired, and we still had issues kind of in the home stretch.
Yeah.
Why'd they make that change if the success formula in 2016 was to have a smaller group?
I think, and like rightfully so, like you would think this in any business, right? Like if you did X amount with, that small of people and then you multiply it, you would think, traditionally your efforts would be greatly enhanced, right? But in politics, especially working for Trump, that's just not how it works. Like the more people you have in the building kind of control or spin or massage whatever narratives you have going out the door, the worse off they tend to be, because that guy, he's got the most sharpest marketing mind and gut that I think we've ever seen in history.
Trump?
Yeah. He does it all himself, man. I mean, like,
So he's very involved in the marketing side of things.
no one is coming up and telling him, like, pitching him name ideas, right? Like, no one's like, hey, man, you know what you should do? You should call Ron DeSantis DeSanctimonious. Like, no, he's coming up with that, man. He's smart like that. He knows what's going to stick. I have to admit, like, I shrugged my head at that one. Like, come on, there's no way that's going to work.
Oh, Mini Mike, was it?
Lil Marco?
Lil Marco.
There was Lion Ted. That was my favorite
What
one.
was the Bloomberg one? What do you call him?
Oh, shoot. I don't remember.
I think it was Mini
I don't
Mike.
even know
might
if
have been.
Bloomberg
I
was
think it
relevant
was
enough to
Mini
get a nickname.
Right.
No, he
And
gave
then
him one. I remember.
Small Hands, and then Jeb Bush, like
Small.
Sleepy Jeb or something.
Yeah.
No, it's Sleepy Joe.
Low
Sleepy
energy.
Joe.
Low
Small.
energy
Jab.
jab.
Yeah.
Very small.
The please clap. That's so good. No, like that was him going up against Jeb. Those were some of my favorites. That's when you knew, like, oh, like he's not taking prisoners, because he was basically just like crapped on the entire Bush family. And I will never forget. It was a debate in South Carolina. He crapped on the entire Bush family. He's like, maybe your mom should be running. That was like the retort he had. He's like, my mom would say this. He's like, maybe she should be running for president. And like, it was just the doors were like blowing off from there. Like, you never go after someone's mom, and he did it, and everyone like stood up and clapped. Like, it was incredible.
Only Trump can do
Jeb's
something
like,
like
fucking
that.
square up, buddy.
What does that look like though? Like, what goes on behind the scenes of running a presidential campaign?
Yeah, it's tough, because you basically have to learn how to delegate to people across the country, countless people across the country. In a lot of ways, it is like running, a Fortune 500 company, and that you've got people all over the place. They all need to be, on the same page as far as objectives and messaging are concerned. And then you've got to run, in the various different verticals. You've got to massage members of Congress, get them involved and out there endorsing and going on the road, and really getting them to go out there and spread your message for you. Or you got to do voter contacts, like I said, or you got to go out there and buy TV and media, on all channels. It gets more diverse and more, interesting every cycle. And so it really is. It's like running a Fortune 500 company. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So cool. And that's why I think Trump was such a qualified fit, is because he had the business experience, and that's how he ran the country.
Yeah.
Like a business.
Yeah, and I think where we really, you brought up like Fauci getting a medal and stuff. I mean, I think like in 2020,
he heard that.
Yeah, they're
I'll-
good.
yeah, I remember. But
Not doing sign language over here. We're having a conversation.
right. Well, I contend to this day, I don't think he lost the election to Joe Biden. I think at the end we lost the election to COVID. Right. When you think about it, you guys are media guys. Like, every time someone put on a mask, or someone had to like disinfect their fruit at a Whole Foods or whatever.
Yeah, like your
it's like
your
$20
everyday
in
life is
kind.
fundamentally changed.
Yeah, it's like a $20 in-kind donation to Joe Biden, and he didn't have to do anything. And the media and social media, they were all in the tank for him, so much so that I remember we cut an ad, and I don't know if this is reported anywhere, so you guys can talk about it. We cut an ad, and it was all about like the Hunter Biden laptop, which I've held the hard drive in my hands before. Like, it's real.
You've had the
It's-
laptop?
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a tangible thing.
It's like the slideshow at the end of The Hangover.
Yeah,
You ever seen that movie?
Pretty much. It's just
Pictures are wild.
Florida starts playing whenever
Yeah.
you open up the top. But like we cut stuff about that. We put in an ad, and we're like, CNN, we want to spend a couple $1 million advertising on your network. Like,
They're like, no.
here's our money. And they're like, well, this can't be possibly be substantiated. We're like, well, you want a copy of the laptop? Like, I got a buddy who's got like 3. You want one? Like, no, like that's not how this works. It's not credible. Like, we didn't report on it. It's like, that's not how any of this
Doesn't make it
works.
credible just because
Right.
you reported on it.
And I think like we see the rise. I think it's really given a lot more license to folks like you guys and folks across like the media landscape to go out there and do their own thing, independent of traditional legacy media. I think that them like censoring the Hunter Biden stuff, the way they covered that election has had such a wide impact, not only on politics, right, but people outside of it are looking at what goes on when you trust a big like established brand with what you're saying. And they've made the decision that I think it's so much more powerful. There's so many more content creators out there doing their own thing now, as opposed to 4 years ago. And we'll be talking about this for forever.
Yeah. Well, that, along with the laws with absentee ballots because of COVID being expanded so far. I mean, he was up against a lot, but at the end of the day, Joe Biden, man, how do you lose that guy?
Yo, my favorite was the dead people that voted. That was my personal
That was your
favorite.
favorite?
Yeah. How there were people who were born 150 years ago who voted.
I like that.
That was cool.
They voted a dead person into office. I mean, he is like the cadaver in chief, bro. Like he doesn't do anything. Like, okay, we're taping this today, this morning.
Yeah.
There's all this action going on in Israel, and I think you mentioned you want to get into it.
Yeah.
Homie didn't wake up to put out a statement. Like, he didn't put out a statement till like 10:30, 11 a.m.
Got to get those 8 hours, man.
Like, bro, that shit happened at like 2 a.m. Like,
Yeah.
you're not waking up like early enough to put out a statement before then. That's crazy. And like, you have something at that level and that scope happening, and you've got some like junior staffer in the NSC giving out statements to reporters at 4 a.m.
It's crazy.
It's despicable.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder bad stuff happens. Like, there's a literal dead body occupying the Oval Office. It's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we transition, what's the dynamic like working on that 30-man team? Like, is Trump in a boardroom with you guys talking to you, or do you even report to him at all, or how does that work?
I'm not transitioning anywhere. I just wanted to be clear that we're not transitioning live on this podcast unless something's going to happen off camera that I wasn't aware of. No, I mean, he basically, what I like about Trump is that a lot of people view it as like chaos, but he likes to like pit folks against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you've got an idea and you've got an idea, he's basically going to encourage you both to like fight to the death, and then like the best idea wins. And I think it's very toxic in like a non-political setting, but in politics where there's so many different issues and everything you have to approach from like 6 or 7 different angles, it's very helpful. Now, when you get into office, it then becomes about, okay, who has the most access to them, who can, because if you don't have access to the guy, you can't pitch him your ideas, and bad guys get in there and crap in, crap out. I mean, that's how it works.
So I guess my question was, have you ever sat with him and been like, we should do this, or do you report to somebody who reports to somebody who goes like all the way up?
I've been in the room as like we make decisions, and so I confidently say like I've been in the room where you're pitching ideas back and forth, and he's literally stopped and been like, how many jobs does it make? Okay, go do it. Like, at the end of the day,
Damn.
That's what I love about him is it's all about like tangible quality of life improvements. Like, when I was at the White House, I hit the mic. One of the projects I worked on was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And never there's like studies out there about how long it takes from something to happen in Washington D.C. for people in like local communities to actually feel it.
Yeah.
And it's like it's ages. Sometimes you never feel or really even understand people if they're doing stuff. But with that, it was special. It was special because we did that, and then in like 2 weeks, everyone saw a rebate. 2 weeks, like your taxes went down, you weren't paying as much money, to the federal government, and that is where I think like he doesn't get enough credit because like those are the criteria, right? Okay, well, is someone gonna talk about it? Like you can criticize them for being.
No one reported it.
Yeah. Well, you can criticize them for being like narcissistic. He was always talking about no one talks about the shit I do, but like that was kind of like the criteria, right? Like if you're doing the right thing, people are going to be talking about it.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and the economy was absolutely booming, right? It was the strongest economy we've ever seen since like Clinton, when we had the surplus, like way back. So he really only got like 2.5 years, 3 years to do stuff, and then COVID.
Yeah.
And basically shit hit the fan. So I guess for you guys, how do you even like begin to tackle the huge fucking task of saying like, hey, this guy should still be president even though the world just like shut down? Like, was that like your biggest hurdle, just trying to say like, despite COVID, he should still win?
Yeah, it was tough, and I think a lot of people criticize him for the way he handled it, but then those same people also criticize him for like, it's just like no one has made up their mind still as like how we as a nation will collectively address this. Like when they write textbooks for our kids, if we ever have them, when they write those textbooks, no one really knows how that's going to shake out.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably guess. And so I think like what we're seeing is everything's constantly evolving, and people's true feelings about what happened aren't necessarily what was being communicated to the masses, because Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, legacy media, they were all censoring it.
Yeah, which was all proven, like with the Twitter files and and everything. So that was shadow of doubt. Because like if there's a time of mass uncertainty, an outside person would say, okay, you want continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want to change things. But every single media outlet was like, this guy's doing a terrible job. We need somebody new. And they're like, why? Like, just listen. Because we say so.
Yeah, and I think like you ask about making the case for a second run at things. and there's two ways we can take this convo. This is where I wanted to go earlier. We were off camera. Was just think about it, right? This guy is either going to come in there and destroy Washington, D.C., be like more unhinged than anyone because he's motivated to do so. He can only serve one term. Who fucking cares? Like, he could come in here and just torch the place to the ground, right? Or he can come in here and set up the future, and you know, find some flag bearers and lay the foundation for future victories. There's really like no way we are going to know which way he's going to go. I think he's going to go in the former, because the whole theme of this is unfinished business, right?
Yep.
Like, he's got to get back in there and get revenge. It's like an action movie. You know, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger just blowing people's heads off. And that's him to like everyone in the primary. Like, he doesn't have to show up to debates. I mean, that's crazy. He's out there like speaking. He was at a McDonald's, or where was he the other day? He did an off-the-record stop while they were debating. And Chris Christie had the balls to look in the camera and be like, "I know you're watching, Donald."
Duck.
Donald Duck.
Duck.
Oh, that was the worst of all
So
time.
cringe.
Like, and he's on camera somewhere actually like campaigning. Like, it's so funny. So I think he'll be unhinged, and I think that's what people want. At the end of the day, I think in my most like removed times, in my most removed thoughts, because when you look at what happened in like Pennsylvania, where like Fetterman won, or that guy in Georgia, like Warnock, like all those guys in Georgia that won that they probably shouldn't have. You think like people just kind of want a guy. It's like sports betting. Like, they're going to bet on the guy they think is going to cause the most noise.
Yeah.
And, you know, they want the underdog and the anti-establishment guy. And that's going to be him until he dies. Like, they've spent so much time and money coming after him that it's just, it would be a shame to not get him back in there.
That's the thing, though. That's exactly why I think he's going to lose. If you just look at what happened in 2020 with guys like Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker, like all those MAGA candidates, for lack of a better term, didn't win. Like, there was no red wave like there was supposed to be in the midterms. So, like, my whole thing is, like, once again, I like Trump. I thought he was really good. And then COVID obviously was like, you can't say if it was good or bad. Nobody will know till 20, 30, 40 years down the road. I just don't think he's going to win the general, and I want a Republican in office. So that was my whole argument before we started.
And your argument for him not winning the general is that they're just not going to let him do it.
Yeah, I guess. Because, like, there was, you know, obviously there was claims of voter fraud and all these different things. But, like, if nothing's fundamentally changed since, like, it would just happen again.
No, that's a serious concern. The only thing I would ever say is that, like the Ron DeSantis people would make that same argument.
Yeah.
And electability has never really been like a criteria, like a winning criteria. Like, you look back at like Mitt Romney, like that guy on paper is like wildly electable. He's rich. He's, you know, well spoken. At the time, like, he represented the party, unfortunately, and like he got creamed.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like the words like that, like he's not going to win the general. That kind of never really ever pans out, like in reality, the way that we think. And so, I mean, shoot, dude, like I was there in 2016 where we beat Hillary, and like,
Was that like did you have any expectation for that? Like, we're not going to win? Or were you like, there's a chance, or you were certain?
I was pretty skeptical, but again, like we worked for Jason Miller, who's a senior advisor now, and we were doing work for Matt Bevin, who won in Kentucky, and he was down like double digits in polling like the week up to election day, and he won by double digits. So at that point, we're looking at everything with a grain of salt. Like, they've been getting this wrong for like 2 or 3 years now. There's no telling what could happen. Like, honestly, like I couldn't tell you what I thought was going to happen that day, but when we won, it was lit. Dude.
What was that?
You guys
night
party?
like?
That was probably so sick.
Well, I was exhausted. I think I fell asleep in the office, but like we won. The party was across like a few blocks away in Manhattan, and we walked from the tower to, I think is it the Hilton? It's at the big convention center down there in Manhattan, and people were like whipping rocks at us and shit. Like, you know, and I was like at a high. Like, my dad calls and he's like crying. That's the first time I've ever heard my dad cry. Like, my boy did this, and like, you know, we're all like stoked. And we step outside and people were pissed, and like we couldn't get in the office for like days afterwards because people were protesting. I don't know if you remember, like the traffic
the
in New York was
Succession
terrible.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys keep telling me I gotta watch Succession.
Yeah, there's
should.
like a scene
It's
like
great.
this in Succession when a presidential candidate wins, and like the streets just go crazy after. So that's
Yeah.
what it was like.
Yeah, no, it was absolute mayhem, and but a lot of people fail to remember, like afterwards when we were selecting cabinet officials too. Like, people would come in the tower and like meet with him. So like they let the press. This the guy just gets media and marketing, and he's just creating all this anticipation. Like people are more financially literate and more literate on like a lot of the issues now, because we had like big names like come in and be the cabinet people. Like I couldn't tell you who a HUD secretary was for like Bill Clinton, but I could tell you Ben Carson. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that guy's he's a G. He's like he's an original. He's the king of brain surgery. And so like people always forget, like they would parade folks in front of the camera up to the gold elevators like every day. And I got in an elevator with I was just happened to be getting like a cup of coffee, and Kanye comes in. This was like one of my favorites. And he like gets in the elevator from there, like don't get in, and I get in the next elevator with like all his homies who he's got like this camera that is older than my dad probably. And I was like, dude, like what are you doing? Like surely he can afford like a better camera than this. And he looked at me dead serious and was like, Mr. West believes the only true way to capture a moment is via, and he started like rattling off all this tech stuff. And I was like, bro, this has got like dust on it. What are you doing? It was absolutely wild. But people forget that, like you talk about like his marketing genius and things like that. He turned it into a spectacle. Like he's like the closest thing we have to Elvis right now. Well,
Yeah.
Taylor Swift maybe, but he's the other closest thing we have to Elvis. It's pretty nuts.
What was Kanye doing there?
I don't remember. He's like, he was always around. He and like Kim came to the White House to do criminal justice reform for a bit. So it's not like we were like engaging with those guys in a different way than like the left like parades them out here to be like, you know, human shields on stuff. Like they parade Olivia Rodrigo out into the press briefing room to like be a human shield on some nonsense that day. It's just ridiculous.
It's so funny, man. Damn. It's so crazy. Tell that one story you were telling off camera too about when that tape came out leading up to the election, what that was like internally, the reaction.
Yeah.
Or was it the Hollywood?
The grab her by the pussy tape. That's what most people are going to know it by. So, like, that's, you just got to call it what
get
it
right
is.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the Access Hollywood tape was pretty. That was a pretty rough day, and naturally, no matter who you are, you're gonna have people in your life calling you, telling you you're making the wrong decision, and like only the strongest guys. Like we had one guy bail. He just totally bailed. He couldn't take the heat. His name's Rob Burgess. Rob Burgess, if you're watching this, screw you, bro. He completely.
Damn, we just lost a subscriber.
He's a big fan, actually.
It's okay. He works for Asa Hutchinson now, so he's like not making good life decisions. So he's probably not watching.
Didn't he
this.
like not make it through to the second debate?
I don't know. If you put a gun to my head and you said identify Asa Hutchinson and you put like 30 people in front of me, I wouldn't be able to
I'm
figure out.
going to call my wife.
I was like, I gotta make. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. But no, so that was like a pretty rough day, and I was telling you guys. So, we had like a couple of us, like we shoot hoops. Like I played basketball all through high school, a little bit in college, and the 14th, I think it's the 14th floor of Trump Tower is like where they used to film The Apprentice, and so it was all hollowed out, and that's where they would keep all the shit, like the cardboard cutouts of Ronald Reagan, or like, you know, all the fan mail. There's just like piles and piles of fan mail. People love this guy. And so like we had an intern or somebody went down to the 14th floor and put up an outdoor basketball hoop. So like, you know, we're having a rough day. Like every day more people are coming out and saying that he's like touched them. Almost none of them are real, right? At the end of the day, like he batted down most everything. And we just shoot hoops. So I think it's cute to like dunk a basketball wearing loafers. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. And I dunk and I land, and immediately like my leg snaps in half. I'm like rolling around on the ground, like in incredible pain.
Jeez.
And I have like the worst friends. Now they're like some of the best political operatives, and we're ride or dies, whatever. But they're terrible friends. And like I was just writhing in pain on the floor, and they just kept going on about their day. Eventually, someone brings me.
No one stopped it?
No one stops. No. Except one guy who's Trump's like communications guru now. His name's Stephen Chung. He's the hardest working guy in Washington. He like stops the goal from decapitating me, and he never lets me live it down. He's always like, "Well, I saved you." It's like, "Well, no one took me to the hospital." Someone comes, brings me a handle of Fireball, and I just pound it. Like what? Because I'm like going into shock. I can see like a bone sticking out of my foot. I'm
you had
like,
a compound fracture and nobody helped you?
Like, yeah, it was bad.
No one stopped to help with you.
No one stopped to help. Thank you. Yeah, let's keep piling on because
With your
I'll send
bone
this.
out of your
I'll send
body.
this clip to them.
So that shows how big of a deal the story was around the office. Because there's literally one of their team members.
Oh,
with
that
a
was
bone
that
sticking
day,
out.
too?
Yeah.
It was bad, and
This guy's a liability.
So someone brings me a handle of Fireball, I just like pound it and like I don't know what I'm doing. I like drag like my lifeless limb down like 4 or 5 escalators to get down and out the door. I grab a cab to like a Manhattan ER, and I'm sitting there and I'm just laughing my ass off because I'm messed up. Guy next to me's got like an open gunshot wound. It's like gushing everywhere. The dude over here has got like a knife in his leg. I'm just laughing hysterically. You know, like the nurse comes up and is like, "What are you on?" I was like, "Fireball." I could barely make words. Like, Fireball. She's like, "What is that? You need to tell us." I was like, "Whatever, lady." And they like stuck my foot in MRI, and I'm still like cracking up. Like, "Bro, this is like the grossest thing you've seen today, right?" And he's like, "Nah, the woman in here before you, she shit her pants all inside this MRI machine." And he hits the button, and that's like the last thing I remember is like being like slowly rolled in. And it was so bad. So life lesson learned: never go to the ER in Manhattan. It's terrible. New York's a terrible place anyway. It's so bad. It's like
Not a big fan
everywhere.
of New York.
I
We're all from upstate New York, so not from the
Are
city.
you really?
So yeah,
Okay.
if you want to talk down in the city, that's fine.
no, like it's got its moments, and like pre-COVID it was pretty legit. Like you could go out there and get into some trouble, have some fun, and like it was nice. Since COVID hit, it's just a dumpster fire of a place. Like,
Yeah.
The trash problem is out of control. It smells like piss everywhere you go. And now there's like it's overrun with like illegal immigrants. They're like we're paying, or New York taxpayers are paying to. Are they hosting them in like the Roosevelt or something crazy? Like they're putting them in the good digs, like historic digs, and like.
And the drug problem
This is
there.
bad. You get the AG up there that sucks. Like it's
Yeah,
all
even the
terrible.
New York City mayor just recently flew down to the border, which
Oh,
Biden
yeah.
still
To do
hasn't done.
what?
So like, no, because he was like, "This is ridiculous. We need to change things." So it's like, even
Oh, I wonder who had a plan to stop that.
Someone did.
who's that?
Uh,
Bob Johnson,
Dr. Bob. Shout out to Dr. Bob, the man, the myth.
the man.
No idea what the guy's doing now.
I hope he runs for president.
It'd be funny. It'd be really funny. I don't think we're ready for a Dr. Bob Johnson.
Yeah.
So you were talking about betting odds and such, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Vegas tends to be pretty unbiased with like the lines, right? And Trump went from like plus 150, which is an underdog, to minus 800, which is like you're up by 30 in the Super Bowl. It's over. You're gonna win.
Mm-hmm.
I go to bed. I wake up. Biden's back to being the favorite. So from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m., Trump went from massive favorite to underdog
What happened?
because of 4 a.m.
Yeah, right.
Because of 4 a.m. landslide rolled in with the mail-ins. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. I mean, they think what I hate about it, and I say this all the time, is like they think so little of people like us that they do all these things like in broad daylight.
Like acting like no
Like,
one
they
will
think
care.
like we're stupid. Like
Well,
we're
most
not
people
gonna notice.
are. Most people didn't notice.
Fair.
So did you keep tabs on all the court cases that happened in like Arizona and Georgia and all the places afterwards where there were claims?
I wasn't like
Because I
very-
did it personally, so I
no,
can't. I don't wanna
like
speak
I
on
wasn't
it.
like intimately involved in it, and like we wrapped things up in 2020 after Election Day, and I was like one of the first guys to be like, "You're paying me, I don't need to be here. Like use my salary." I dipped pretty early, but I mean the whole thing was wild. Then you got like Rudy doing press conferences outside of Four Seasons lawn like landscaping, and like it is. What people fail to understand is that there was like a team of people like in place to like put together legitimate claims and stuff like that, but there was so much chaos because of the way in which everything happened, that like all of like the talking heads and the pundits got involved, and it really mucked things up. So I hope we've learned from this, and that if something were to happen on 24, we're a little bit better prepared to insulate what matters.
So you're saying there was evidence that just didn't substantiate, or?
Well, I think like the way they went about, I'm aware of like what Rudy was up to. He wanted to prosecute it all as like a RICO case, and that would require you finding evidence that everyone from the different like places was talking to one another and coordinating. You're never gonna like they're not stupid. Like they know what they're doing. Like the left, this is like what they do. When you own the methods of distribution, when you own things like big tech, social media, when you own, legacy media, when you own the courts, when you own all these things, right? You're able to see around corners in a way that everyone else can't. You're able to drive history in the direction that you want it to go, and that's kind of what happened. Like that's what we saw, and it's just a shame. But I think they've gotten a little too cute by half, and they've done all this out in the open in an area where there's actual competition in the marketplace. We're not all dependent on like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube anymore. Like there are places like Rumble. There are places like I worked at Gettr, was a original guy there. Your Truth Socials, whatever it might be. Like there's actual like competition now, and people don't. I mean, like we're all trained. Like it's trained behavior to go to like those places, but like you don't have to anymore if you don't want to.
Yeah, it's changing. One thing that is obviously like really hard to argue against with Trump is his policy, right? I feel like that's what everyone comes back to is like he had good policy, it worked. One of the policies that I always cared a lot about was peace in the Middle East because I mean I'm Middle Eastern, my family's from Lebanon, I still have a bunch of family out there, and Trump was one of the guys that actually brought peace to the Middle East. And now we're sitting here today, like you were talking about earlier, the whole situation is in Israel with the war against them in Palestine, and now Iran is getting involved, and even Lebanon is getting involved. And so, like, talk about, like, I'm just interested to know, why did Trump's policy work in the Middle East compared to what Biden and even Obama was doing before?
The way I like to phrase kind of his foreign policy is almost like peace through savagery, right? Like homie he's just like getting into Twitter fights with Kim Jong-un, but like
Rocket Man.
right, but like you knew where he stood, and like he wasn't the opponents. Like if you're looking at like chess, like the opponents had no idea what he was going to do next. But Trump always knew. Like we always knew what he was going to do. Like yeah, like the minutia might change from here to there, but ultimately it's very simple. It's like getting out of foreign conflicts because it's nonsense. Like we shouldn't be giving money to other countries like that. And it's about like defending our own borders. I think that was another thing is you treat our borders and other countries' borders as sacred. It goes a long way in negotiating and things like that. I think in regards to like peace in the Middle East, it was obviously, those Abraham Accords were huge. The even little things like they were allowing, flights from different countries to pass airspace that was never been seen before. You're looking at, he had a really good relationship with Netanyahu. And that was actually a really cool thing. We engaged with him, I think during the camp. It was either during the campaign or after we had won. I'll never forget. We didn't have a photographer like in house. So, like I grab a camera and I follow Trump and Netanyahu to like meet in his house.
Who's
like,
that? Just for
The
context.
president or prime minister of Israel.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And he, like the whole apartment is like gold plated, and like those are just some badass dudes. Like they're not gonna think twice about smoking some guys who like, cross them. And I think that's like the hidden element to this that really like preserve peace in that area. Now you look like we've already covered, like you've got a cadaver in the White House, a corrupt one at that. Like he's selling influence left and right. He just like unfroze $6 billion in funding to Iran. We just freed a ton of their prisoners for like no reason. We left all those guns in Afghanistan for like no reason. Like that was awful. And like not only that, but imagine like if you're in the military and you see your commander in chief doing shit like that, like how does that make you feel about stuff?
My cousin's in the Air Force, and he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak on it, but like,
Yeah, no, it's like it's got to be hard to get up and do whatever, dumb corrupt shit he's asking you to do every day. And think about like if you're an ally of us, like you feel confident that guy's going to step up and defend you? Like no fucking way. He's not even getting up out of bed. Like we were talking. Like, he didn't get out of bed this morning to put out a statement. And like, that's not even something he like thinks up. Like someone writes that shit for him and he signs off on it.
Yep.
So he didn't even get up like at an early hour. No one woke that guy up in the middle of the night to like put out a statement or to call Netanyahu or anything. Like he's putting out tweets at like 10:30 a.m. This should happen at like 3 a.m. That's like totally unacceptable. And I think like this is what happens when you basically vacate leadership in our country is people see that and they're going to take advantage of it. I think, what we're also doing with like, I personally think a lot of this comes back to what's going on in the Ukraine. And, Russia is obviously very heavily involved with what goes on with Hamas. And I'm not like a foreign policy expert by any means. I just check Twitter like every 10 minutes, like every other millennial. But like honestly, like it makes sense for them to kind of divide us even further, like than another conflict. This is going to have impact on like gas prices. We can't print money fast enough to like, fix this problem the way that we've committed to doing. And like we're going to have some serious issues. And what I'd also say is the stuff in Israel's been going on for what, like 12 hours now, and my Twitter feed is all videos from like what's going on there, right? Have you guys seen any footage of what's going on in Ukraine? Like, do you have any idea? Like, is it as bad as it? Like, we have no idea.
Early on, there was some, but then a lot of it came out and like,
It was
this
false.
is staged, this
I don't
isn't
believe
real.
anything
So
that
like
I
it was
watched.
hard
Right.
to see much. But there were a ton of videos in the beginning, and then it definitely tapered off a whole
I don't
bunch.
believe anything like if I'm not seeing it, I don't believe it.
Yeah, well, that's probably smart. It makes you probably the
Like
smartest.
you think
out
they
of
had
all of us.
propaganda 80 years ago? It's probably so good today. Like you don't know what's real.
Right, and I think like that's like something that the public at large, and especially the Biden guys, like they take it for granted. They're like, oh my God, you see this TikTok? Like we got to get in there. It's like, let's start funneling more money to Ukraine, where my son has got business holdings and is
People
in
will
deep
send
shit.
people will send a quote, like an Instagram DM of like a post of a quote from somebody, and it's a completely fake account. I'm like, dude, that's not real. They're like, oh shit. I'm like, oh my god.
It reminds. It's like that Office bit where he's like, if you're a racist, I'll hunt you down with the North. Abraham Lincoln said that. It's like, that never happened.
Yeah, it is really crazy.
But why do you why is there a sinister agenda behind what they're doing? Like, why do they want to just cause chaos like this? I don't understand.
Well, I think it depends on like who's behind it, right? I think it's likely some sort of Russian, not op, but they're instigating it. Yeah, and that's just what's been going on since the dawn of time in that region. Like, it makes so much sense to just like light a powder keg over there and then walk away if you hate us. And what you got to think about too is our border has been open for like 3 years. Like, we don't have any fucking clues in this country right now. Like, they could all be here. Like, they could be next door, like listening right now, for all we know. This is what happens when you have someone like vacant in the White House, and when you've got guys that put their own needs and their own interests above the interests of the country, and they're very committed to doing things via the status quo.
Yeah, I think people just have like a natural tendency to want to stay in power as well. Biden's got like the whole military industrial complex behind him. It's similar to Trump. Like, he's obviously did great things in the Middle East. And I think like his stance on de-escalation once he gets in office is favorable amongst most Americans. But like when he lost the last election, you could see like that natural like proclivity, like I want to stay in power. I feel like that's just something that both sides have, no?
It's just human.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just think like it's easier when you wield the intelligence apparatus the way the left does. When you wield like social media and like we've said time over time, like legacy media, like all those guys, like they're in his pocket.
Yeah.
So it's not only easier to get tempted to do that kind of thing, but it's also easier to get away with.
Yep.
You know.
So you talked about Biden, like obviously not waking up until like 10:30 to see the very important news today.
Right.
When you hear about Trump, they always say like this guy is just a workhorse, like 24/7. Like he barely gets any sleep. He doesn't do alcohol, all that sort of stuff. So what does it actually look like day to day? Like Trump running the president,
Yeah.
or running the Oval Office or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like a homie doesn't sleep. I'll never forget having to adjust like his schedule and prepare clips. So, like what he does, like one of the first calls he used to make, and again, it's been a minute since I've been around, so I don't know who's getting these calls now or whatever. But he used to call the comms director first thing, and it wasn't ever like to ask questions or to be told like what to say that day or anything. He was testing you because he's already been up. He's already read like every front page story. And so like if you miss like one, like, hey, sir, so here's like what we think is popping off today and yada, yada, yada. Like if you missed one headline, he'd be like, what about this? Did you see this? If you didn't have the answer, like you were going to have a bad day. Right. But not a lot of people understand, like a lot of the decisions are like made by him. Like and the other thing that people fail to understand or they've forgot about, because I think it's pretty common practice now, but he's like the king of TV, right? So he knows that no matter what happens on the screen, like as long as that Chiron on the bottom doesn't match like what you want, it's all moot. So like we would have staff literally, like we had a war room of like 6 people, and they were changing Chirons like during his speech.
What's
like,
a Chiron?
It's like the description of what's happening.
Okay.
It's like it's
Like the little
yeah,
like
the
watching
banner,
on
the banner.
ESPN,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like this guy got hurt.
Yeah,
It's
like
like
LeBron James sucks, or whatever it is. Right?
I love it.
And like,
that's where this whole thing started. It could all be traced back to the fact that I'm a LeBron guy.
are you really?
Yeah, love LeBron.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
King James.
I'm a Celtics fan, so I've had a rough go of it.
Yeah,
Not recently,
lately.
but, like,
lately.
it's so heartbreaking that they get so close every year.
You're gonna win it this year.
I'm a Heat
Think
fan.
so?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
See,
You got Porzingis
I
and Drew
like that.
Holiday.
I like that it's just like the island of misfit toys.
Yeah.
And they just ran with it, dude. Like,
Culture,
that's
baby.
So fun.
Culture.
Heat culture.
And-
I would vote Pat Riley for president. No
Yeah?
doubt. Yeah.
He's older than Biden, I think.
No, that's the one old guy who he still got it. He's the godfather.
okay.
Him or
right.
Spoelstra.
Understood.
So back to the changing the banner.
Oh, right.
I was curious about that.
Yeah.
I was getting excited to talk about the Celtics.
Yeah, this was Jimmy Butler versus Jason Tatum was gonna be way more fun.
It's going to be good. I'm upset about this Drew Holiday trade. I'm going to level with you. I really
Really?
like Robert Williams.
Okay.
I don't
Drew
understand
Holiday's
giving
way
him up
better.
and the picks. It doesn't make any sense to me.
We'll see.
You got Porzingis.
You got
For
Porzingis
20
and Horford
games
in the
before
front
he-
court, right? Like you got both of them in the front court. Like it doesn't make sense. Someone's getting hurt, and then we're gonna have to sign some goober off the street, like at the last moment.
Yeah, Porzingis is gonna have the same Celtics career as Gordon Hayward.
No. I think he's gonna have
that's
a
a hot take.
revival.
If I had to guess, it's gonna be injured. Forget about him.
Nah.
It's a hot take. Gordon Hayward had a run, bro.
Oh, in Utah, he was
He
nasty.
had a run.
Yeah.
We love a good, yeah. We love a good hustler. All right, back to Trump. No, so like that's like kind of how he sees things, and I think that's very helpful. He understands like the public sentiment. Obviously, he's kind of not like the father of like the America First movement, the populist movement in our country, but like he's the spirit animal, right? Like he gets it better than anyone else. So he knows what needs to be done, and that's like kind of what he does. Like they criticize him for watching a lot of TV, but like it's like
That's the job.
It's the job, right? Exactly. And like again, like I said earlier, if they're not talking about it, then like were you really effective? Like, no, probably not.
That's a good point. So he's a hard worker.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and no decision is final until like it's out the door, right? That was also something that a lot of people in like the political establishment struggle to understand, because like for years you control the candidate, right? Like the consultant controls the candidate, and with Trump, like he's just sending you on a ride, bro. Like I knew that I was getting too old for this shit at the White House when part of my job was I'd go to the Hill and I'd brief like 100 comms directors on Capitol Hill and like what the administration was doing. And I'll never forget, I walk into the office, I'm like, hey, I'm going over there. I'm getting a lot of questions already. They all want to know if Alex Azar is going to be HHS secretary, if that's what we're going to name today. And it's like, can you give me a hint? Like, is that something we're going to do or not? And someone in the White House, they look at dead in the eye and they go, I can guarantee you that won't happen. I said, okay, great. I'll tell them. So I go, I get my briefing. Someone asks, hey, can we expect this? I said, I was told with certainty that this will not happen and that it may not ever happen. Right after I say that, everyone's fucking phones go off. Like everyone gets the Twitter alerts. And he had tweeted like, oh, hey, I've nominated Alex Azar to be health secretary. And I was like, I gotta take a break. Like that's when I knew I needed to get out because I was driving myself crazy. You got to retrain the way you think. If you're like egotistical about it and you're not there for the movement, you're not there for him, then you're not going to succeed. I think you see that in a lot of, not only like with him, but with a lot more of the populist conservative like content creators too. They're all like built in the same mold.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to like right now, why do you think 2024 would be different than 2020?
Because there's no COVID to fuck it all up.
I think
I asked him, sir.
Yeah.
yet
I think he's gonna agree.
I think that is a big part of it, and time will tell whether or not they try to pull some like grand scheme. Like if I put my tinfoil hat on, I think like they'll find a way to kill Biden and blame it on. No, honestly, like he's old. Like he can catch COVID, like Zeta variant for all we know, and like pass away. And they try to lock everyone down. But I think people are so fed up. And like every cycle we speak, like, oh, this is like the battle for the soul of our nation, and like this is historic. This is it. Like if people are this fed up with this crap, and that guy still wins, if Biden still wins and is in office, then we are fucking hopeless, because like people have not seen a single tangible quality of life improvement since he took office. And I'll even expand even further. They've totally exposed their entire platform, and that is one, they live to gaslight the American public into what you're seeing in front of you and with your own two eyes isn't real. That's like the number one thing. Oh, gas prices are high. You got the walking virtue signal. What's her name? The press secretary? Karine Jean-Claude Van Damme. You got her. She goes up there and she says, "You're wrong. Gas prices are cheaper. What are you talking about?" That's like shit that happens like in the press briefing room every day. That's one. And then two, like their whole premise is that they want you to feel alone, right? So like they want you to think they win when you are the only person who thinks, feels, sees, eats the way that you do. When you're the only one that feels that you feel that way, they gain power. And this is like what they've used social media for years. And I think we're finally in a place where there's enough marketplace, there's enough competition, that they're not going to get away with it. So I think like we're really at a precipice. Like 2024 is like is it. Like all of it's on the line.
I want to get your take on this. So you're shifting into like the content world in social media. So after you left Trump campaign, you went and started or were a part of the initial team at Gettr.
Yeah.
Right. And I was watching your speech, I think at CPAC in 2022. And I think you opened it up by saying like, screw Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Twitter's the worst. So how has your opinion changed since? Because that was before Elon took over.
So here's what I'll say about Elon. It's complicated, right? Like I don't think that he's done really anything. Like I'm big on like tangible. I think I've used that word like 30 times so far. But like he hasn't made like a real like tangible improvement to like the customer experience since he took over. Like yeah, you can. He's like streaming Diablo 4, and that's cool. But like we had that once. It was Periscope, right? Or was it was like Meerkat before? So he's not like innovating in a way that I think people expected. I don't know if that's like him. He's got to tear shit down before he builds it up or what. But I'm like a little underwhelmed. Like, and I think that conservative-minded or free speech-minded folks really put a lot of eggs in this basket, and I was really worried about that. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, he's a fucking troll. He's like the king troll.
He might make like photo ID verification, which would be crazy.
Or like, what was he talking about the other day? He wants you to be able to like pay people using your Twitter accounts or something. And like, that's not what it is. Like,
no, that's about to transition to X though, because he's been working on like X since the early 2000s.
And that's like everything in one place. Like,
everything in
one
place.
Because I'm sure they don't. Well, they might, but
yeah, basically. So he's been working on X, and he owned a company. Was it also X, or what was it called beforehand? Yeah. When they merged with PayPal, then he sold PayPal among like with all the other PayPal mafia guys. Then he got into Tesla. Then he did all these other things, and now he runs like 4 multi-billion-dollar companies, which is incredible. But his vision for X when he first started was like the everything.
It's
app.
like China's got an app like that. Is WeChat or something?
Something like that. But anyways, he wants to do like peer-to-peer payment processing. So like similar to what PayPal and Venmo is. Basically every single type of social media wrapped into one, which is why you're seeing like longer form content on Twitter, all of these different things. So I think he has such a big vision that he actually hasn't been able to make like tangible improvements, because he's not just like, okay, this is what Twitter was. Like, let's make like clear improvements to Twitter. He's trying to fundamentally change what it was into this big everything app. And it's going to take some time. I think realistically what you said was correct. Like he's kind of got to tear everything down. Like they lost 80% of their staff.
They didn't lose him.
He fired him.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably what he's been most busy with. Because like you talked about Trump being a workhorse. I don't know how Elon Musk does it. Running that many companies.
He still has time to play
troll.
Diablo and
it's crazy.
troll.
He's more active on Twitter than I am. He's tweeting all day.
Right. Well, I think like the one thing he can do to like restore trust and really win a lot of people over would be to kind of expose the back end algorithm in the way that he was kind of outlining, and that like you could tell if you're shadow banned or if there are strikes against your account or whatever. Like people aren't like fundamentally like, you can say, you feel like all speech is free speech and everything should be allowed. But ultimately, I think people would be more okay with like people being banned or deplatformed if they knew why.
Yeah, if you just like clear guidelines on why you would get banned. Like
you
say
can't contact these people.
They were just like, they're just like dunking on you and you were gone. Or like, it truly is in a world where people's like livelihoods depend on this kind of thing. it really doesn't make sense to me that everything like that would be a secret. Like, I think we'd be more okay with things and I would know where to spend my time, right? That's the other thing is if I didn't agree with the way they were handling things, okay, I know I shouldn't waste time doing this anymore. I'm going to go diversify my, online portfolio. I'm going to go spend more time on Instagram or post some boomers on Facebook. I don't know, like whatever you're trying to get, but it's interesting. I'd say like, you got to remember he's a troll at the end of the day, and like he could just change his mind tomorrow. And, like bullshit.
Yeah. I don't think he's done the best job in the world, but I think he's done well enough to fend off competitors. Like there still hasn't been a real replacement. Like even Threads.
Threads.
When's the last time somebody went on Threads?
Yeah.
Never. Everyone's like, you got to join. This is a new thing. I'm like, no.
After 1 week, flopped. So what was that like getting into like starting Gettr, like a social media app? What was the experience there?
That was the most fun job I have ever had in my life, and I don't think I'll ever get back to it. Like I'm a big video game nerd, like all that stuff, and I was basically being paid to make Gettr like a fun place to invest your time. Like that's all really like marketing was. So it was going out and like finding content creators that you would want to like meet or know that would be interested in the vision, or like creating content or events that would engage with the audience. Like one time, this is actually a good story. So we launched live streaming, and like no one could figure out what to do with it. And live stream actually ended up being the backbone of the whole app. And it started with, I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go break the all you can eat pancake record at IHOP. Like, I'm going to fucking do it. So I post like something like, hey, everyone join me at like 7 p.m. I'm doing a big thing. You should all tune in.
And how many users at this point?
We were at a couple million then. Like this is fairly early, but not like peak. Like after Joe Rogan joined, we really popped off. But this was like right into getting live streaming, and I shit you not, within minutes, 30,000 people were watching me eat pancakes, and it was insane.
You get like the adrenaline rush to keep going.
How many did you take down?
I like went to the gym before. I was like, oh, like I'll be hungry after, but instead I was still like, I'd been taking like pre-workout. I was like tense. So like they start bringing out like the silver dollar pancakes. I'm like inhaling. I inhale like 1, 2, 3. I was a fat guy then. I'll be honest. And my boss, our CEO, he stops by like the IHOP. He sees I'm doing it, and he like pops by the IHOP, and he's just like, this guy's gonna break your fucking record. Bring him bigger pancakes. And they bring like these massive I couldn't. I think I only got through like 10 or 9, and I had to stop. I was like asking people in the chat, like, call a bomb threat in to the IHOP in Clarendon, Virginia. I need to be let out of this. Like, someone please. And eventually I just had to give up. I was like, I was gonna be sick everywhere. But that was the most fun I've ever had, because like free speech, no matter what you're, on the left or the right, like we were able to find middle ground on a lot of issues. Like Enes Kanter, before he kind of got even more red pilled, like he and I didn't agree on things like vaccines or masks, but we could agree that like China sucks, and like we were able to onboard him and like get him involved in doing stuff. And it was a lot more fun to find like middle ground on those issues, because at the end of the day, like there's that through line of people who believe that like you should be able to say what you want to say on the internet, and without fear of being canceled, because it's important. Like,
simple concept.
Yeah, you guys understand it. Like if you were canceled or censored and like you couldn't get the word out,
probably will be out for this
folks,
one, but
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I didn't do enough, like a lot of election denying, so I think like you're probably good. If we were to talk about like global warming or something like that, they might like
Plus, we still got me Steel Manning on here.
Yeah,
we're probably like, this
how
guy's good.
How about Joe Rogan? You mentioned you got him on the app. How did you get him on?
It was crazy. So like a week or two before, we got Dr. Robert Malone. This is gonna get you. You want to do this?
Let's go. We're already in.
All right, you're already in. So like a few weeks before, we got Dr. Robert Malone on, and he was like basically erased from the internet for suggesting that like he's like a COVID doctor. He's a smart guy. And he goes on Joe Rogan like 2 weeks after, and a couple of us just happened to like call him like while he was about to walk in the studio with Joe Rogan, and I didn't know, but like I didn't even ask him to ask Joe to do it, and he brought it up on the pod, and Joe's like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Like he gets on. and then a few days later, he said it was all fugazi, and he kind of dunked on us because like it was a point where this is like where it's really important. Like you build your product to scale. Like we had this feature enabled where what made us an attractive option at the beginning was you could import all your Twitter shit onto Gettr. So because all that's your IP, right?
Yeah.
We're basically daring Twitter to like come after us, because all your thoughts are yours. So you could import all that in, and you could import like your follow count from the other accounts.
Okay.
And so like the follow count for Rogan was obviously massive. It was more than like the users we had on the platform because it took both. And so he thought we were like fudging the numbers, and Joe, like he wasn't interested. We were like, oh, hey man, like let's talk about this. Like it's okay. He was like, no, like this is fake. Like stop calling. It was a whole thing. He doesn't like go back on after doing something like that.
Yeah.
But it was wild. But again, it's just kind of one of those things where it's an attractive message and it's attractive value add, and it was so much fun, dude. I still to this day I haven't had that much fun yet.
That's awesome, man. And what was the competition like with like Truth Social? Was there a conflict of interest or?
No, like Truth didn't really ever take off. I mean, it still hasn't really taken off. Like if you jump on there, you're basically going just to see
What Trump's saying?
throwing up his
It's like his
thoughts.
email list.
Yeah, like the content creator market, it's so like it's so like diluted on the right now. Like a lot of them are being paid to show products or paid to do X, Y, or Z, and so they're everywhere, right? And so getting the exclusive rights to someone's stuff on your platform is tough, and they're like, the interface on Truth is a little wonky, and it's fine. I love that he's doing it. And I love that they're keeping the fight alive, but it just never really worked. Like we get calls all the time, like your stuff is just better. I mean, like there's an audience. Like this is a very underserved audience, and if you had a good product and you took it to them, it's very easy to win them over. It was a lot of fun.
Makes sense. Okay.
All those apps basically failed though, right? Truth, Gettr. I mean, Rumble's actually doing quite well, I think.
I'm gonna be very interested to see like where Rumble ends up, if only because they've spent like an ungodly amount of money like acquiring talent.
Yeah.
Like you don't acquire
Tate's
half those
on there.
guys. Yeah, Tate was on there. We had Tate with us for a bit, like until obviously he was back on Twitter.
Sneeko's huge on there.
Really?
Like, yeah,
I think he's the
big.
biggest on the whole
Really?
platform. Yeah.
You know, like I like Gideon, like
Gideon,
I like Frank
yeah, I was
dude.
gonna
So,
say.
like, that guy's
It's hilarious.
hysterical.
Yeah.
Like they really diversified like the offering, and they brought in these guys.
They IPO'd, no?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it's just so funny because like then you see them like ringside at the UFC, and Trump's there. Like it all feeds into itself,
Yeah.
right? Everyone's like going to check that shit out. It's been really interesting. I don't really know where Truth's at. I know when we left Gettr, there's a Rolling Stone article about how they wanted to become like the marketplace for unvaccinated semen. And so
Could have
like
been a good pivot.
when the company was around there, that's when we were like, yeah, it's probably a good time to bail and like,
Yeah.
find something else that's fun to do.
That's a wild pivot.
Yeah.
But the story is
Yeah.
interesting from there because the pivot, from what I understand, is you went and became the CMO at Valuetainment, which is Patrick Bet-David's company. So
Yeah.
how'd you land on that opportunity? Because it's huge.
Yeah, it's it was a lot of fun working with Pat. I only stuck around for a few months, but it's just he's a killer, and it was just happened to be a chance meeting. He met a friend of mine, and we all just hit it off immediately. And I think the way that Pat is uncompromising in his vision, and the way that he knows exactly what he wants to be someday,
Just like Trump.
is very powerful. And there's a lot of like there's a personality. Like a lot of people would look at someone like Pat, and I met the guy, I believe him, but a lot of them would look at him and be like, you're full of shit. Like what qualifies you to be, have an opinion on X, Y, or Z? And he doesn't care, and I think that's awesome. Like he's just fully empowered and practical in the way that he goes about his business, and it's great.
Absolutely. Is there a lot of similarities between him and Trump, would you say?
Yeah, I think like just the way they handle people is very similar. Like they're very, they both work very hard. They're both very well spoken, and they speak to the core of an issue. I think that's where like Trump was especially successful, and Pat seeing kind of a similar phenomenon. It's like people are tired. They don't want to be talked to like they're fucking stupid anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with an unparalleled access to like information and each other that we have. Like the world is so much smaller that you don't need to talk to someone like they're stupid to get your message across. And I think that's really important. And, you know, when you've seen success in like business, it's always funny. Like, this is barely relates to what we're talking about, but it just goes like to the way they carry themselves, right? You see like Ron DeSantis at a bar, and people aren't losing their shit over him, right? And that Trump goes to a bar and he's like signing women's chests, and he's like, you know, buying blizzards for everyone, and he's like making it rain, like it's so funny.
With the toilet paper, remember that?
Right. Well, that was in Puerto Rico. That was hysterical. But like, it's the way they carry themselves. Like, no one wants the boss to come like pretend to be like one of us, right?
Yeah.
We want to be with the boss.
Yeah.
And like that's the way like Pat like carries himself too, right? It's very powerful, and it helps drive that message home like so much easier.
So if you get the call for 2024, you going?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider it. That's a very big commitment. I just got engaged last weekend, so
Congrats,
now
man.
I've got
Congratulations
to
on
run
that.
it by someone else. That's a whole concept I haven't even thought of before. But you know, I'd do anything to help him and to help, you know, the Republican Party in 2024 without a doubt. It hurts my heart. I'm an Army brat. I grew up, you know, idolizing this country. And I won't stand here and watch this guy teach future generations to hate themselves and to hate our country and to like disrespect, you know, centuries of what we've been doing here for some like woke nonsense. It just doesn't compute for me.
Yeah.
What do you think about RFK?
He's interesting, man. I think like he definitely takes votes away from Trump. He's got a good message. It'll be interesting to see like who offers him what to get him to stop, because ultimately that's what all this is about, right? Like if you were to ask me today like where Vivek ends up, because I don't think he's going to take a cabinet spot. I think he's on the record saying not that he wouldn't. I would bet he like runs for Senate in Ohio in exchange for like an endorsement or something like that. Even though there's some really great candidates in Ohio already. With RFK, I don't know anything, obviously, but I would imagine this is a play to be like HHS secretary, because the vaccine thing is like his life's work.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like this close to getting there. He's got enough, you know, he's a powerful enough messenger. He's got a diverse enough message. I think like he just lacks a campaign apparatus around him that takes him to the next level. And I think that's what this is. I think it's a play for like, you know, a favor in that sense. Like, oh my God, dude. Fauci's head would fucking explode if they put that guy in charge of like vaccine response or something. It'd be incredible.
That'd be awesome. My last question for you is like, if you were, you know, CMO again of Trump's campaign, what do you think is the winning marketing strategy to get him back in office?
Yeah, so I think like what we learned last time is obviously the CMO role it doesn't need to be a thing. What I would tell him is I would almost do less. Like I would almost take I hate that I'm saying this, but I would almost take a page out of the Biden 2020 campaign handbook. You're up 50 now, and like Biden's gonna have to resurface eventually. Like things are so bad right now that he can't just hide in his basement this time. And so I would almost like, I wouldn't do rallies. I would do kind of what he's doing now, where he's like showing up at events. He's doing like off the record stuff like pizza parlors and Dairy Queens, and really just like firing people up. That shit goes more viral than anything anyone else has like ever done ever. Yeah. Right. Like how many times you scroll through like Instagram and you see like, you know, the photo of him like signing that girl's, you know, titties or like whatever. Like it was crazy. Like no, I've never seen anything quite like that. I don't think anyone has. And so I think that genuine approach, doing less rallies, doing less more formal things, is probably the winning strategy for him. He takes over the internet without having to spend a single dime at anything, right? Like, why fix it if it ain't broke?
Good point.
Love that. I mean, my last question is, what would you say to somebody like me who wants a Republican office for all the same reasons that you mentioned earlier about like traditional American values deteriorating and just thinking that Trump isn't the guy? Like I would almost rather have any other Republican run against Biden because Biden is such a bad candidate.
I think, and there are a lot of arguments that I can make in response to that. But the one I'll go with this time is that look at how much he terrifies those people, the people in D.C. Whether it's the intelligence apparatus or it's the bureaucrats there that are just like entrenched, they're never going anywhere, right? They're so scared of that guy. That alone is probably worth your vote. If the establishment is that scared of your candidate, if he's that big of a disruptor, and he has a proven record of providing, quality of life improvements, right? He's got to be the guy. No one's scared of Ron DeSantis showing up in like a vest and a Columbia fishing shirt that he got at Costco and like his lifts. No one's scared of that guy, but they're terrified of him because of what he can do with messaging, with the vendetta he's got against them in return. Unfinished business. It's like the Undertaker. They're like big. Looks not to go on any further, but a lot of like Republican operatives and Trump himself, they're like big WWE fans.
The Undertaker coming out of the coffin.
It's exactly like the Undertaker coming out of the coffin. That's what you're gonna see. You wouldn't vote for that?
I just don't think he's going to win. Like I'll vote Republican, whoever's depending on, unless maybe if RFK Jr. got in there versus Trump, I may consider RFK Jr. But anybody else, like if it's Biden, if it's Newsom versus Trump, yeah, I'll vote for Trump if that ends up being the nominee. I just personally don't think he's going to win. Like I think I agree with you. Like everybody's scared of him, but I just think there's so many people who are like anti-Trump till the death of him that it's just like, hey, I don't care if it's Biden. I don't care if like Biden legally dies and it's just like Biden's wife running.
Right.
I think they're just like, I hate Trump so much, I'm going to vote against whoever's on the other side.
I think the two things that would scare me are one, they're going to make an attempt at assassinating him. Like at some point, it may come to that.
Trump.
Yeah, because he's so accessible, and like that would be the only way to take him down at some point, right? But then the other thing would be, if we, as like conservatives, as like a party, don't do enough to protect like our election integrity, that would be what would really scare me. I don't think Trump ever loses to the other candidate. I think he's always losing to something else. Like I said, COVID, or in this case, whatever they trump up to fight him, or whatever laws they pass, like absentee stuff we were talking about off camera. Like it's all nonsense. And so I don't think he loses to anybody, but I do think if he does lose, it'll be to some sort of external factor.
Yeah, which is like a common argument. And my rebuttal to that is almost always, if it happened last time and all of the cases that were tried in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, didn't overturn anything or really fundamentally change anything about the system, what makes you think they wouldn't just beat him again the next time?
Yeah, I think right now, at this very moment, he's polling kind of outside the margin of fraud. And I feel good about that right now.
So now it's just a big enough margin to where that small.
Because like you're not going to be able to get away with like tipping an election by like 30 points, right? Or like 10, 15 points. Like that last election came down to like such a small number of people that it was very easy to like fudge the numbers if you're them.
Which is kind of like my whole point going back to it, is like there's at least half the country, probably more than half, that just will vote against Trump.
I don't think. I mean,
Have you seen the videos on Instagram of like the woman in the street that's like, streets are for Trump now? Like everyone's getting hyped.
Yeah, this is true.
And that's one example, but I'm sure there's a lot.
But
of those.
I do think the polling thing is interesting because the last election he was behind in the polling at this point, and was until the night of the election, and then the polls look a lot different today.
Yeah,
I think
so
her
that
quote was like,
margin-
they painted him to be the villain, but we realized he's not. Like people are starting to wake up, I think.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We'll see what happens, because like it may come
It'll
around.
be fun to clip this.
And
Yeah,
then
right.
I may look like
See what happens.
I fully realize I may look like a fucking idiot
Wah, wah.
a year later. And
We
if
all
I
look
am,
like
I'm
idiots
happy.
when Michelle's
I'm
in
happy.
office,
right.
man.
Yeah, when
I need water.
Big Mike was on the ballot.
If anything, the entertainment value, like the Clippers, like I need water, help me, like all the memes from that, where it's like I wake up after 10 vodka sodas and a cigarette. It's like, help me, I need water.
Oh man, well, dude, thank you for coming on the podcast. This was awesome.
this was sick.
Hell
Great
yeah.
conversation.
having me.
Really good conversation.
Seriously,
And,
are we taking a dip in this?
Yeah,
We're gonna jump in right after
the
this.
cold plunge. Okay, cool.
Awesome, bro.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Dude, thank
Good
you.
stuff.
That was great.
Seriously,